Good morning, and welcome to Unity Church of Practical Christianity. We're pleased to welcome both of those in our sanctuary this morning and those who are joining us via our Facebook live stream. For those in the sanctuary, please turn off your cell phones to prevent any alerts or conversations being picked up on our live screen microphone. At this point in our service, we would typically greet our neighbors. However, to maintain social distancing, today we will simply send silent namaste greetings. I behold the Christ in you. Thank you. To our visitors today, here or online, we appreciate your joining us and welcome you into our Unity family. Our mission at Unity Church is to realize and express our oneness with God. Our vision statement is, we are a loving spiritual community where we teach, share, and express unity in all of life. Today's special music will be provided by Angelo Rapon, our musical director, and Julianne Tutko. Consistent with safety protocols, we remind you to keep your mask on and that we are not singing today. Our message is being brought to us by Reverend Mickey Quinton, and the message is entitled, Good Fights. Reverend Quinton will now lead us in our opening prayer.
We're thankful for the words of the psalmist, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Today we rejoice that we can be together, the spirit of love. It's so good to know we are reconciled, that we are one, that there is peace in us and through us. And so we rejoice now in that peace and that joy, in that sense of freedom, through the power of the Christ. Amen.
With our masks on, let's stand and join in affirming our statement of being. All together, God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am an individualized expression of God. I am ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. You may be seated. Our daily word focuses today on comfort and affirms Christ in me is my comfort. Experiences that move me out of my comfort zone are part of my life. The first day at a new school, starting or leaving a job, a new phase in a relationship, retiring from a career, the passing of a loved one. Any change can invoke discomfort, even grief. I grieve when I think of change as loss of security, loss of my place in my community, or loss of love. The Christ, the divine presence of life, love, and wisdom within me is my constant source of comfort through all of life's changes. I find assurance that although its physical expressions may change, life can never end. I know oneness and love with all who have been dear to me. Recognizing my divine nature, I know that there is no loss, change, or circumstance that can limit me, and I am comforted. From Psalms chapter 71, verse 21, you will increase my honor and comfort me once again.
As we begin our time of meditation, I invite you to get comfortable, to feel the support of your chair or the couch or your bed or the floor, perhaps to feel your feet beneath you or grounding you to the earth. then to take a deep breath in and out, and in and out, breathing in peace, breathing out worries, breathing in health, breathing out dis-ease, and feeling with each breath that you are becoming more and more relaxed. Before we can fully connect in our relationship with others, we must first develop a relationship with our true self. Our true self is grounded in spirit and experiences safety, peace, love, and compassion from the inside, regardless of outer circumstances. In contrast to that true self is our ego self. Our ego ultimately keeps us separate from others as it looks for safety, love, and compassion in outside people, situations, and things. Ego draws us away from our true, essential, spiritual self, and is often the source of disconnection in our relationships with others. In meditation, we can connect with present moment awareness, and it is in this present moment that we feel a profound closeness, a oneness with Spirit. The practice of meditation allows us to deepen our relationship to our essence within. So here and now, to nurture a relationship with your true essence, I invite you to put aside any concerns and instead just focus on your experience in this moment. When your mind wanders and you notice a thought or feeling belonging to the past, the future, or ego, simply notice it as such and then let it go, returning to the here and now. Begin by noticing your breath as you breathe in, filling your lungs, and then breathe out, emptying them. Now experience the beating of your heart. Just notice that. And now affirm these enduring qualities of your true essence. I am connected to Spirit in this present moment. I am connected to Spirit in this present moment. I feel peace with every breath. I feel peace with every breath. My true self is grounded in love true self is grounded in love and compassion. And now just continue to deepen your relationship with your essential nature, affirming these truths. I am connected to Spirit in this present moment. I feel peace with every breath. My true self is grounded in love and compassion. As we approach the end of our time of meditation, just continue to breathe in and out, in and out, and to take whatever time you need to return to that chair or couch or bed or floor, bringing with you the sure knowledge that you are connected to Spirit in the present moment, that you feel peace with every breath, that you are grounded in love and compassion, and that it is your true, essential, spiritual self within that will open the door to healing in every other relationship. And for that, we say, thank you, God. Thank you, and amen.
Alleluia.
Good morning. Hope everybody is having a great 4th of July weekend. I'd like to welcome everyone physically present and those in our live stream audience. To those physically here, was anyone by any chance a first-time guest with us today? Oh, hey, namaste. Thank you so much for being with us today, sir. Let's give them a hand. Isn't that wonderful? We appreciate that. I think my wife's already given you your gift bag. If you'd be so kind as to leave, there should be a slip in there for a record of your visit. We would certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much. It means a lot, isn't it, when people braving, getting out, and visiting a new church, a congregation. It means a lot to us. Oh, excuse me. My divinely inspired notes. Yes, indeed. But I'd like to continue along the same line as Reverend Don and Kata did last week. It was so cool. I really enjoyed that. I was visiting my son for a late Father's Day, and I caught it on YouTube, and they did such a great job. And so I kind of want to continue in that vein with a subject called good fights. So how many know we need good fights? Because good things come out of good fights. I was reminded of the story it's not quite as familiar today, but it was a long-running debate between two men in the 18th century named John Wesley and George Whitefield. And some of you probably heard of John Wesley. He's credited as the founder of the Methodist Church. He actually never intended to start a church, but he called them initially Methodist Societies. And they were founded, he was actually an Anglican, a member of the Church of England until the day he died. But he founded these Methodist societies for the purpose of helping people draw closer to God. And he joined, one of his students initially was a man named George Whitefield. And Whitefield became very prominent in American Protestantism. He traveled from Britain to, at the time they were still the British colonies in America. And he began to preach and had an enormous impact. And he's credited as the leader of what they call the First Great Awakening in America. And Wesley was really his mentor. But in process of time, a fierce debate rose up between them, and concerning how one is actually saved, how one is actually made right with God. And this debate centered on Whitefield favored Calvinism, which said God predestined everybody to salvation or damnation before they were born. And then you had Wesley who said, no, that's not right. God gives everyone the choice and the grace to receive eternal life if they want it. And so a fierce debate emerged between them. What's interesting, they both had an enormous impact in their time. They were both greatly renowned, but they were very divided on this issue. It became so heated at times that Wesley wrote George Whitefield in a letter. He said, George, put away thy sword. Because it became so heated, and there was a split between the Calvinist Methodists and the Wesley Methodists. And so this debate went on for years, and there'd be times they'd reconcile, and then they'd fall out again, reconcile, fall out again. It was like a relationship, they were constantly fighting. But there was a point in time, Whitefield actually passed away before Wesley did. And someone inquired of him if he expected to see George Whitefield in heaven. And Wesley replied, no, I don't think I'll see him there. And they said, we thought that's what you'd say. He said, no, George will be so close to God's throne, I'll never get a glimpse of him. And this says something very significant. Now, I know Mr. Wesley was speaking through the paradigm of an 18th century man. And to him, God was this male figure that lived in the sky. And as Unity people, we know that's not the case. We've grown in understanding. He was long before the revelation that came with New Thought and the Fillmores. We know now that God is not up there. God is present in God's creation. Isn't that true? We know that. We know there's no throne room or office, way up yonder. But Wesley was speaking as a man of his time. We understand that, and we know a little more now than he did, though we do not diminish his greatness and his impact. But what impressed me was the character of John Wesley in his remarks to Whitefield. First of all, when he said, "George, put away your sword." In other words, you can disagree with me and not be my enemy. It's possible, isn't it? That we can have even a very strong disagreement and there's no need for a sword to rise between us. So that was the first wonderful thing that we gathered from Mr. Wesley's remarks. Disagreeing does not make you my enemy. And secondly, when he said, "I don't expect to see George in heaven because he'll be so much closer to the throne than I could ever be," he was saying disagreement doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, he thought he was a wonderful person, an excellent person, a man of great character, though their disagreement was very strong. How many of you have a very strong disagreement and still have a very strong love? Isn't that true? And we need to get back to that. It's such a rancorous environment in the United States today, politically, religiously, in so many ways, that it's time we rediscover the art of having a good fight. That we can actually disagree, express our disagreement in a way that doesn't make someone our enemy, nor does it diminish the fact that they're a good person that deserves to be heard. I recall recently, this came to me so strongly, because from time to time I like to get in lively debates, online. And I have a lot of friends whose political views are quite different than my own, people I went to high school with, people, that I know and love. And we just don't agree on a lot of stuff. Some stuff we do. But I remember I was having this particular discussion with an old classmate named Denny. And we were at odds on this issue, but we were discussing it in a good way, forcefully but not nasty. And all of a sudden, this other friend of mine on Facebook comes in named Chris. And Chris begins to utter all kinds of insults toward my friend, his point of view. I think maybe even his parentage might have slipped in there at some point. But, he was being quite mean, toward him and saying things that were personally insulting. And Danny, I remember he said, at that point, he said, I wondered when the name calling was going to start. And I thought, man, he is so right. Because even though I agreed with my friend, the other guy with Chris's point of view, I did not agree with his approach at all. Because it was counterproductive. It wasn't helping anything. How many know I dare say there's never been somebody won over by expressing our contempt for them. Have you ever found that helpful? I haven't. And indeed, I don't think anyone has. Even though I agreed with the other guy, I did not agree with the approach that he took because it expressed insult and bitterness and did not enhance the discussion at all. And so I remember one of the final things I said, "You're killing me with this, Danny, but I still love you." He said, "Back at you." How many know that's a great fight? Isn't that right? I don't think I still won him over, but one thing's for sure, I got a chance still of possibly doing so, whereas Chris has no chance at all. We need to learn how to have good fights again. Isn't that true? So how do we do that? How do we have a good fight? Well, I want to suggest to you good means where there's a win-win, where one doesn't have to win and one doesn't have to lose, but we both win because we both come into it in a good spirit, expressing ourselves in a kind way, and hopefully learn something from each other. How many of those two great expressions, in the news, two major expressions in American news? You have CNN, which leans more toward the liberal end, and Fox News, which leans more toward the conservative end. And generally people tend which is their favorite. I have a favorite, which will remain nameless because, I don't want to get political, in the pulpit. But I will say this, there's times I listen to both of them because I like to see both the points of view. And there's times I can actually learn something from the one that I don't normally listen to, which shall be nameless. Good means win-win. There's things we can learn from the other side, things maybe we hadn't considered if we looked at it from their point of view. How many know winning and losing does not apply in relationships? Winning and losing applies in warfare or in sports. Should never apply in relationships. Isn't that true? Husband, your significant other, if you're constantly trying to best them, you ought to question, whether that's a healthy relationship. Isn't that true? And so, I remember, how many remember the comedy Seinfeld? How many loved that? I mean, it was one of the greatest comedies ever made. He ranks up there with I Love Lucy, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Beverly Hillbillies. It was great. And I still love to see it, even though I've seen them all many, many times. But I remember in one particular episode, Elaine had found her a new fella. There were so many fellas in Elaine's life over the course of the series that none of them seemed to work out well. But she found this new fella, and she said, this guy is amazing. He doesn't play games. And Jerry Seinfeld replied, no games? How do you know if you're winning or losing then? And how many know that's not what relationships are about, winning and losing? Relationships in the church, relationships in society, in the workplace, in the home, should never be about winning. You've got to lose so I can win. It ought to always be, what can we learn together and grow together, and how can we all both win in this matter? Isn't that true? So the question is, do you want to be right or do you want to be reconciled? There's times you can't be both. Those that are determined to always be right are people that end up pretty lonely and bitter. I've got to be right. But what about being reconciled? What happens there? I've got to tell you, there's a temporary good feeling when you tell someone off, but it's very temporary. It doesn't last long at all. But there's a long-term lasting feeling that's indescribable of being reconciled. And there's nothing like it. It beats being right any day. So will you be right or will you be reconciled? That's what we've got to ask ourselves when we're in a contentious relationship with someone. But nothing compares to the joy of reconciliation, I'm here to tell you. We can think back to some of the great historical reconciliations of our time. For one stands out to me, the reconciliation between Egypt and Israel. Mortal enemies from the founding of the state of Israel. Egypt actually tried to destroy them early on in the 6-day war and were pushed back. But they remained bitter enemies and would still do attacks and would kill one another. And at a certain point, the president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, said, enough killing. And he reached out to Menachem Begin, who was the prime minister of Israel. It was unheard of, nobody expected it, and it took everybody by surprise. And through the mediation of President Jimmy Carter, they met at Camp David and began to work out a peace plan between Egypt and Israel. Reconciliation between two extremely bitter enemies. And it worked, and it still holds today. Nothing like reconciliation. But Anwar Sadat knew he would pay a price for it because in fact, and so did Mr. Begin, there were hardliners in their nation that would not be happy with what had happened because some people don't want a reconciliation. They just want to be right. And Mr. Sadat knew his life was in danger by making this step. And sure enough it was, because there came a day that he reviewed a parade. He was fully dressed in the most resplendent military garments. And he had said before this time, he said, I'm in God's hands and I will never be able to be touched until God says it's time for me to. And as he sat on the reviewing stand, he was reviewing the troops and said all of a sudden he heard gunfire. Assassins had come out of the crowd. And Mr. Sadat stood proud and strong and faced them down and was gunned down. What an incredible man. And it was for reconciliation, for being a man of love and reconciliation between two enemies. And yet his sacrifice did not go in vain, for the peace between Egypt and Israel still exists in our day. Now think about one other, the reconciliation in South Africa, which for years the white minority had ruled the black majority of that country. And one of its key opponents was Nelson Mandela, and he had been in prison for 27 years for opposing the brutal, barbaric system of apartheid.
But there came along a man named F.W. de Klerk, who became president of South Africa. In an unusual way, the current president became too ill to fulfill his duties, so he took over. And the other guy tried to come back in. He said, no, I'm the guy now. You'll have to continue on setting it out. And F.W. Klerk set about, first of all, to release Nelson Mandela from prison. I remember that. It was an incredible event. That's the first thing he did. The second thing he did was work with the African National Congress, Mandela's organization, to begin to dismantle the system of apartheid and see to it that democracy did indeed reign in South Africa. And it brought about a reconciliation that still exists today. There's nothing like reconciliation. Nothing like good fights. Isn't that true? In closing, let's look in the 4th chapter of the Gospel of John. One of the best examples I know of overcoming barriers that existed in the day was the story of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman at the well. And let me tell you, when it came to this is an outstanding example of all the barriers you could think of at one time. First of all, this was a woman in a male-dominated society. They had a gender gap. And indeed, men didn't talk to women that were not present with their husbands. It was looked on as shady. And especially, he didn't talk to this woman because she was a Samaritan. And they were viewed by the Jewish population as being subhuman because they were a mixture of Assyrian and Jewish blood, and they were looked on as people that were planted by the Assyrians to subvert Israel. And so you had a racial difference. Thirdly, her religion was a difference between the two of them because there was a long-running debate. The Samaritans believed they could worship God from their temple on Mount Gerizim, and the Jews believed only in Jerusalem would God receive worship. So you had gender, race, religion. All you need is politics, and they had that too. Because the political dominated society in Israel was the temple, the Sadducees, who ruled the temple. And so you had gender, race, religion, and politics all at once. How many know that's something when you get all of that at one time? All the hot button issues. But if in this passage, let me just read just a few verses to you. He said to this woman at the well, "Give me a drink." And she said, "How is it you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink, since I am a Samaritan?" For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." She said, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where will you get that living water?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water I shall give him shall become in him a well of water, springing up to eternal life." So you see, as she was pursuing, well, first of all, you're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan. Why are you even talking to me to begin with? He said, "Give me something to drink." She said, "I don't understand." And he said, "I've got living water to give you." And she didn't really grasp that he was constantly going beyond the boundaries set by humanity between them and appealing to a higher state of consciousness, the state of consciousness of eternal things, of the water of divine life. And it took her a while to actually get hold of this. She said, "Give me this water so I will not be thirsty nor have to come here to draw anymore." He said, "Call your husband and come here." She said, "I have no husband." Jesus said, "You've well said, I have no husband. You've had 5 husbands, and the one whom you have now is not your husband." Some would say, well, he was trying to shame her. It had nothing to do with that at all. What he was trying to demonstrate was that he knew her. And he knew her life. He knew of her broken relationships. He knew of the pain she had endured. How many of you can't really reach out in harmony to someone that you absolutely don't know or have any desire to know? I mean, there are people that, we can entrench ourselves and make our statements, and we never really know who's on that other side. But Jesus did, and it's a lesson for us. We should know. We should get to know. We should get to understand those that disagree with us. That makes for a good fight. Going on, she said, "Our fathers worshipped in this mountain. You people say in Jerusalem that Jerusalem's the place we ought to worship. Now here's our religious difference." And Jesus superseded that, transcended that. Said, woman, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you worship the Father. For the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such people the Father seeks to worship him. God is spirit. They that worship him must worship in spirit and truth. You see how Jesus was constantly appealing to a higher consciousness? He was appealing to our universal connection by spirit. He was appealing to our universal partaking of divine life that's available to all of us. What a beautiful thing that is. So if we appeal on that basis, we certainly will make progress in having good fights. Isn't that true? Let me share with you in closing the words of Charles Fillmore. I was so blessed to find this. He said, the principal being is not only all good, but it is all intelligent. It is the fount of your intelligence. When you study it, you will find yourself becoming one with the principle of all wisdom. To be one with the principle of all intelligence is to know. When you know, you will find yourself so broad in judgment and understanding that you will have charity for all who differ from you in religion, metaphysics, and even politics. We can have good fights, isn't that right? We just got to make sure we're connected thoroughly with divine mind. God bless you.
inspiring and demonstrative message this morning. And thanks to Angelo and Julianne for the addition of their beautiful music to our service. Now is the time for the giving and receiving of our tithes and offerings. This is another aspect of our service that we are adjusting for safety. As you exit the service today, there will be boxes outside each door in which you can drop off your offering. Those at home will find options for giving and for making a prayer request in our email blast and on our Facebook and web pages. But for now, let's hold our gifts in our hands, infusing them with gratitude as we bless them with our prayer for prosperity. Altogether, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Reverend Clinton will now bless our tithes, offerings, and prayer requests.
Affirm together that every gift given is now blessed to multiply back to the giver, good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That waves of prosperity will come as we are faithful to give out of a heart of love. That God's great work will be extended and many more lives will be touched and blessed and made free. And so it is, by the power of the Christ. Amen.
Please remain in your seats during the peace song and prayer for protection. For reasons of safety, we ask that you not join in the singing today. In addition to Julianne singing the peace song for us, we are continuing with the call and response of the prayer for protection. Please feel free to join in the spoken word part of this prayer, and then let Julianne's sung response resonate within. At the close of our prayer for protection, our ushers will release everyone row by row, starting with the back of the sanctuary. When your row is released, please exit into the parking lot to avoid creating a crowded environment in the lobby. As a reminder, there are boxes to receive your contributions of checks or cash located outside each of the sanctuary exits. Please allow 6 feet of space between yourself and those in front of you while placing your offering in the boxes. Our gift store will be open for one person to enter at a time. Should you need to use the restrooms, they've been stocked with disinfecting spray bottles. Kindly use them after each use. Julianne will now sing the peace song. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you.
The light of God surrounds
power of God protects you.
The power of God protects you.
The presence of God watches over you.
The presence of God watches over you.
Wherever you are, God is.
Forever and ever, forever and ever.
To those present here today and those joining us online, we appreciate you choosing to share this uplifting time together. Our ushers will now escort us safely from the sanctuary, and on your way out, you can drop any offerings in the boxes by the doors. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to you joining us again next Sunday.